Okay, we're going to talk about Agile today. We're not going to talk about the great things about Agile and how Agile is great and absolutely fantastic. I do believe so, and I can explain that to you because, as it happens, I have a company. This is my company. This is my contact details that you should take on now. I do not have business cards. I want to save trees and money, so I do not have any business cards. I have a company that happens to do, among other things, Agile coaching. So if you want to learn how great Agile is and can save your 30% on average successful projects and maybe help the 60%, well, 70%, 30 and 70, that's right, 70% that on average fail on waterfall projects, we can have a talk. But today we're going to assume that all of you, absolutely all of you, wants to apply Agile in your company. So how many of you are actually using some form of Agile? Okay, how many of you do Scrum? How many of you do Crystal? How many of you do Lean Kanban? Okay, anyone else doing something else? Yes, you do Toby development, Toby-driven Toby-driven development. Great development methodology, sadly not portable. So we're going to assume that the rest of you, how many of you are not using Agile? Raise your hands. Okay, so the rest of you, hopefully I will convince that Agile is a good way to implement a project, and I will teach you, hopefully, a few ways to avoid all the problems you're going to face, which are usually massive when you want to turn your company into agility. As for all the others that are doing Agile, hopefully by the end of the talk, you'll realize that a lot of stuff I'm talking about has not been implemented, because very often Agile doesn't get to give benefits. It just becomes Agile for the sake of Agile, aka people doing daily stand-up and call them daily scrums. Anyway, so when you're going to want to apply Agile in an organization, you need to see at different levels, and you need to have all those levels sorted out before you start, hopefully, ideally. Ideal is not my middle name, sadly. First, you need to define if the organization is going to be able to sustain the change needed by Agile methodologies. Managers and CTOs need to be your friend. No, they do in general, but for Agile, you really need to get them involved, because they are going to be the people that will not fire you. And so that's important. And then you need to define if your project is going to be feasible using an Agile methodology. Now, if you ask me, every organization, every manager, CTO, and every project can adopt Agile. Not a problem. However, when you try to do so, you're going to encounter a few very irascible people, I suppose. So we're not going to talk about two things today, because I have no example of them. I've not worked in them. I don't know how to do Agile with them, or I tried and failed. And as such, we will not talk about high turnover companies. Okay, if you're in a web media agency and your whole team lasts for 2 months, then you're not doing Agile, you're not doing waterfall, you're doing headless chicken development. So when you run in a circle until you pass out, right? And it's fine, because you will never do more than a V1 except for very, very, very few cases, in which case you will have your 3 permanent employees actually working on it. It's true, I worked in plenty of web media agencies. It's always the same story. And high documentation environments, there's plenty of people that have books about them. Go and read them. I cannot vouch for their quality because I have no interest. But if you have that as a requirement, then, do an Amazon search. So we've set up by now that your organization is ready for Agile. I can see you eyes saying, yes, we want to be Agile. And as such, you need now to go and chat with managers and CTOs. And so you'll hear plenty of things when you go to your manager, but that's a quote from actually a couple of managers I've encountered over the years, telling you, oh, well, we don't want to do Agile. We want to do engineering practices, serious engineering practices. Just like the people that build planes, right? And how many of you have heard that joke on the internet that explains that if we were building a plane in an Agile fashion, we would build the body of the plane, fill it with passengers, throw it in the air, and see what happens. And then eventually, when it falls down, you realize, damn, we forgot the wings. Not a problem. We are an iterative development shop. We'll just add the wings, but there's still no engines, etc., etc., etc. So unless you're called Air France, it's not a good idea to do it that way. But the reality is quite different, actually. So here is a small tip, just a small tip for you to stop the conversation immediately. Is you can send them to the internet, where you will discover that the two biggest plane builders, Boeing and Airbus, have been using Lean and spending a lot of money on Lean methodologies for a while now. They are sharing the same values through Lean as the Agile values that we want in our projects. Lean is a cousin of Agile. I think they are roughly the same thing. For those of you that have been reading people like Mary Poppendieck, or for those of you that are doing Kanban now, all this stuff, stream-based and pool-based methodologies, they are already used at Toyota, where it originates, and Airbus and Boeing are actually using them. So yes, planes are done in an agile fashion, and no, people don't always die. So that kind of stops the conversation immediately now. It's not great to open the conversation, but if you get someone that's a bit annoying, you can cut them off that way. Well, we always have some, right? Not all managers need to be convinced, especially the ones that don't manage you. Then we have the typical quote of, we have a culture of hard working. Now, one of the fundamentals that I always go back to is root cause analysis. It's to understand the root cause of a problem. So when someone tells you, we're hard working, I try to understand the root cause of that statement by sitting in the office after 6 and counting how late developers leave, which is usually 9, 10 o'clock at night. And then you actually try to show up very early in the morning, around 7. Not that I do it very often. I'm not a morning person. But then you see everybody arriving at 8. Okay, so we've established why that comment comes. Then you analyze how people do things, and you realize that from 8 to 12, they're watching BBC News because they're so tired that they have absolutely no way to concentrate on anything. Then they go for lunch, which they usually spend a fair amount of time there, because after all, you need to catch up on all this time you've been fucking around all morning in the office. And then eventually at 2 o'clock you manage to work, and then you have your rush of work from 12 to about 6:30 in the evening, after which you are toasted, which means that from 6:30 to 9, 10 o'clock when you leave, you'll be committing bugs. And that's about it. How many of you have seen those conditions in your office? You can raise your hands, unless your managers are there. Okay, there you go. So these are things that happen. Having a culture of working hard is not a good thing, because working hard is working intelligently, producing quality in a reliable fashion, at regular intervals, so people know they can trust you. Well, there you go. The only way to fix that is to go back to numbers. Managers love numbers. Don't be afraid of stats and numbers. Now, I'm not going to blast managers in general. I'm just going to criticize the bad managers. Later, I'll criticize the bad developers and the bad CTOs and the bad, I don't think we'll have the time, but the bad clients at the end. So you measure. And how you measure? Well, you've got a bug count. You know how long it takes to fix bugs. You know how long you're paid by the hour. So whenever you do a day with massive number of hours compared to the guy that actually comes at 9 and lives at 6 that everybody hates in the corner because everybody thinks he's a communist, you can have a track record that some code is of very good quality and some code is not of very good quality. And that's how you try to explain to a company that actually they are losing money by making people work more. You can also send them, as I did once, the list of all the people that resigned over the last 2 years, which happened to be the best developers. They all ended up in big consultancies that left thinking that your company was a bunch of mad bastards. There's going to be a lot of beeps on that video when we edit it, but people are used to it now, so it's fine. So that's also another reality. If you overwork your people, if you work long hours because you have a culture of working hard, you'll have your culture of working hard with the worst elements in your company, the ones that don't care about their profession enough to resign. And so you will eventually reach the pit of failure, where everybody has reached the level where they don't care anymore. So culture of working hard, I'm not a big fan. Then you talk about how Agile has self-organizing teams. And self-organizing teams mean that there is no point, really, in naming a team lead because he's the guy that's been the longest in the company. That's one of my pet peeves. Guy's been there for 6 years, doing the same stuff for 6 years. He's a team lead now because he's got 6 years of experience. Okay, so why is he a team lead? You still haven't given me a good information that I can process. The reality of self-organizing team is not that we don't recognize talent. It is not that we don't give bonuses to the best people. That's HR job. It's not the fact that they're not being recognized for having the great ideas and being the great workers. What it means is that human beings are actually very good at recognizing who's good and who's not so good in a group. And they do that naturally. And you will very often find teams where you have a team lead that's a bit weak on the technical side. And in an agile environment, someone that's very weak on the technical side is not going to lead the team very well when the team is supposed to be writing code. Because leading a team is not filling timesheets with number of hours worked. You've got ghost charts, but that's what project managers are for. But then you explain all those concepts, and they think it means that they don't want self-organizing teams because they want superstars, people that people look forward to. There's also another reality in this that I will touch on a bit later. So we've established that hero developers are not talented developers. We'll talk about hero developers later. But there's another side to self-organizing teams. The team quality is equal to the lowest member of the team, roughly. What that means is that having hero developers are not useful because no one else is actually learning anything in the process. People that work on their own are not teaching to other people. If you don't teach to other developers, their level will stagnate exactly where it was, unless they have a lot of will to learn, in which case they will probably leave your company because of slide before. So the reality of having a self-organizing team is also to make sure that the team as a whole answer problems, the team as a whole understand qualities, and the team as a whole solve problems. And it's that way and that way only, by building a team, that you will get an efficient agile environment. This one doesn't happen very often. I don't suppose most of you talk to your CTOs at lunch every day. I don't either. At least once a year I did, and one of the guys told me that one day. He told me, well, you told me this estimation process by which you tell me exactly what you know, which is about 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 6 weeks of work, and then you tell me you don't know. Well, no, I don't. Do you know what you're going to do in a year? You do? Yeah. There you go. No one knows. No one knows. So how do these people actually do their budgets? Anyone?
Make it up.
No, we make it up. We make it up for them. Well, normally, they at least ask you to give estimates. You know that they are pulled out of a hat. Right? I mean, that's the reality. When you ask me, how long is that project going to take? I usually answer, I don't know, how much does the client want to pay? But it's the reality, right? The game is not to understand exactly what you're going to do in the next 12 months. So the first step is accepting right now that all the estimates, the ghost charts that we did, were basically estimates. So they're just fluff so that people can plan capacity, right? That's the reason they do a budget. They want to plan their budget, and when it's a question of timelines, the budget are very often just a matter of capacity, the number of people that will have that work on the team. Full stop. So if you get out and say very obviously, well, we gave you estimates, the chances of our estimates having hit target over the last 3 years has been 0. No one has ever delivered the project exactly as the project was written in the spec, exactly on time. There's always stuff and the crap that happens. When they sent the lunar module with Louis Armstrong and whatever else. Well, wrong color. I don't know, it was black and white TV, I don't know. There was errors in the code. The fact that it happened and they managed to actually arrive on the surface was a bug that corrected the bug. It's true, go and read the code. The code was published by the NASA a while ago, and there was a massive bug in it by which it should have crashed. And that's why when the lunar module arrived, it kind of bumped up and down and up and down and up and down. But because of another bug around rounding, I think, it basically stabilized it where it just stopped. So instead of crashing, they had a very rocky landing. I can guarantee you that people that built that software were engineers, because they came for engineering. They were very serious. It was NASA. It was going to the moon. It was no idea why, but they still did it. And the reality is that there was still a bug in it because it was completely unreliable. The Apollo program, who knew that it would take 13 Apollos to send people on the moon? They had a rough idea, but certainly not by Apollo 1, right? Because they had no idea if they would land. So the reality is all the estimates we ever given are estimates, and we do them so that different graphs and charts and Excel spreadsheets kind of meet the number of people we need in the team, because we kind of feel that we will need 6 developers, or our workload increase and we need a 7th. So how do you calculate that? Well, you go back to the basics and you say, if I'm going to do resource planning, then I'm going to calculate my budget based on the number of people I need to build a team. And I will come back to that notion of team all the time. Agile will not build great projects. Agile will build great teams. Great projects and great software is a side effect of having a great team. So if you build a great team, you have great software. If you build a shit team, it's very rare that you have a great software. So, do I have a subtitle on this one? I don't care. Yes. So, finally, another part of the self-organizing teams is the concept that no one assigns us tasks. So automatically the manager goes and thinks, oh, well, you're going to be cowboys and do whatever the hell you want, and there will be no control. No control at all in what you do. Well, that's not true. How many of you know the notion of a backlog? Is everybody comfortable with the notion of backlog? Who doesn't know about backlogs? All right. So a backlog is the list of tasks that need to be done in the software. I need to show an event. I need the user to log in. I need the user to be able to change his password. Small tasks that you can commit to. And that all goes into a backlog. If you're doing Kanban Lean, it will be a backlog limited, and you rely on the client to know what they'll want in 6 months, because you don't want to generate 20 cards that they will have forgotten by the time they're on the wall. If you do Scrum, it's free for all. You just add them and add them and add them, and eventually they'll fall off the wall and no one will remember, because there will be about 20 of them. The backlog is prioritized by the client. That's one of the fundamentals. The feedback cycle in Agile means that you go to the client and say, what do you want? Do you want that one or that one? You can't have both at the same time, because we're single-threaded developers. So which one do you want first? So usually when they're not used to it, they tell you, I want everything. Then they understand, oh yeah, you can't do everything now because you're supposed to work for 3 months. Yes, well done. So we do one after the other. And who controls the backlog? The client. So what the client wants is always at the top. Do you have a choice of picking the task you want in the backlog? No. You always take the top of the backlog. The most important thing is the thing you work on. You don't have a choice. That's the rules of the process. Every process works like that, I think. Every process I know of works like that. So if the client is in charge of choosing where we work on next, I don't really understand how we can do cowboy development. Cowboy development means that you do whatever you want. You go away for 3 days pretending you're working on architecture, and you come with this big egg and just break it and do a big mess. That's usually how it happens. So that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen in Agile because the client is in control. That also means the project manager is not in control. It's the client, as it should be. But the reality is that developers are not in control, and that's a good thing because they focus on what the client wants. So now we've now we're going to choose a project. So we're going to. How many of you do fixed price projects? 2, 3, 4. How many of you have done fixed price projects? All right. How many of you think you can't do Agile with a fixed price project? 1. Okay, we'll skip that completely. Okay, that's. We'll do the second one. We'll skip it, and I will skip plenty of things. It's because it's a very long presentation, and I have a grand total of an hour of battery left, which means, considering it's Windows 7, it's probably more 45 minutes. So that's, on the project, something I've heard very often on Agile projects when I explain the whole concept of measuring output stream and how fast you deliver and planning your capacity of resources based on the work. And then people tell me, no, scope, resources and release dates are all fixed. How many of you have heard that before? About any release? Raise your hands, raise your hands. Okay. How many of you think it's true? Yes, it's not true. It's not true. It's lie. It's a lie. It's a lie that is designed to pervert the young minds. Now, actually, I'm not exactly sure what it's designed for. I think it's this idea that if you put people under pressure, they work better. Because, you know, threaten people with a P45 is the best way to get the best code and the best team. Although in this environment, these days, I'm not so sure, but I'm pretty much sure it is. So scope is always variable for the fundamental reason, we saw it before, that the client has absolutely no clue what they want on day one. So what they do is that you have requirement gathering and you write a big spec and you sign off with that big spec. And so that's great, you know, everything is planned, so surely the client knows what they want. And you encounter two scenarios. Scenario number one, which happens hundreds and hundreds of times. See, arm waving, I should have warned you, don't approach. I'm very dangerous when I give talks. You go and you build a customer screen and you agree with the client. You even have prototype, paper prototyping where you design the screens kind of with the client or with a designer, try to find the right UX. You show them just the prototype that is not looking like a website. It's looking like a hand drawing thing, so they actually focus on the screen and not the color of the font, which helps tremendously. Try and Sketchflow. Sketchflow is great for that. And so you agree that the customer screen is going to do all that. Then you deliver your customer screen and the client goes, to understand, there's no order. What do you mean there's no order? Well, no. I mean, we can't have a customer screen if we don't have the orders that get pulled from the AS400 system over there that you can only access with permission from Bill, the guy with the beard on the corner, because no one else knows the passwords. And he prints them out, so you need to scan them on the other side. Plenty of stuff that you had no idea of when you built the screen. The client assumed that you knew because we, of course, know exactly how they work because we can do their job. I think that's the kind of idea that some clients have, that because we're software developer, we can, I think the matrix has not helped us, can go in their brain and retrieve all the information, and so what is natural to them is not natural to us. So obviously you completely screwed up your first workshop if you get to that point, but that point happens and there's less extreme examples where scope varies completely. So when you have your original work for a V1, for example, you go and you say, okay, there's going to be all those features. And then if you apply an Agile development methodology, you'll realize very quickly that a lot of stuff gets dropped because the client goes, oh, well, no, I can put it at low priority because I really want that feature. And then once that feature is in there, they just go and say, oh yeah, but that thing over there is really cool and we want that. And so eventually you end up at the end of the project, the scope has changed completely and the software doesn't look anything like it was spec'd originally. And that's great because the client is happy. Resources are not fixed, otherwise they would never get called on a project, especially to save it. And release dates. So first release dates are usually an estimate. Sadly, some people commit to release dates to the client before they know if they can deliver. Because some clients want that release date in 3 months and they want it on the 30th of June because X. Sometimes it's valid, sometimes it's not valid. I have a client that has a DVD distribution company. Emmanuel, hello. I doubt she'll watch me because she doesn't like Agile. But when they have the Cannes Festival, if all the new features are not in by the Cannes Festival, it's 30% of her profit of the year that's gone. So you do have a real release date. But the reality in most other projects, 99% of projects, is that the release date is just an indicator. And that's why we invented the fundamental to our profession concept of the soft launch. How many of you have done soft launches? Don't be shy. Don't be shy. So there's about a quarter of you, and probably 2/4 of you are just lying. So the reality is that we always have this end date and we don't really know if we're going to hit it, and the more you get to the end of the project, the more you realize that you should have done your burn down charts and tracking better to realize halfway through that you couldn't meet it. So what do? You rush in, you do the stuff, and you have a soft launch, and you delay the actual launch, and that's a negotiation with the client. And that's normal. That's part of software development. When we give estimates, we are in constant negotiation with the client to renegotiate the dates and the feature scope based on their requirement. As long as you deliver and you can be trusted by the client, it's never a problem. Never a problem. If they don't trust you, well, then you start with a lot of issues already. So, no, they're not. Then you need to build a project team. So when I go to companies, I talk about building teams. I think I've mentioned before that you're building teams with Agile, not software. And one important thing when you build a team is to realize that the team doesn't only contain developers. And that's a very, very, very fundamental thing. Wow, it's already 40 past. Did we start at 8 or later? Quarter past. All right, that's cool. So I still have halfway through. That's good. Small break. I speak a lot, so it helps your ears tone down a bit. Okay, so when I talk about a team, I do talk about all the people committed to producing great software. So we've got developers. Every developer is committed to great software and to great quality. Otherwise, we wouldn't all be doing unit testing and test-driven development, right? Right. Then you've got your Scrum Master. I use the term Scrum Master very loosely. You always have a facilitator. In the past, there used to be a project manager when they were good project managers. Now we call them Scrum Masters / facilitators / call them what you want. It's someone that takes the load off the development team on all the stuff that is not development related. Interaction with other services, getting stuff sorted. It's, in a way, it's kind of the secretary to the developers. And it's a key role. No, but don't laugh. I'm really, really serious. A great Scrum Master is a guy that just takes the load off you. You will never, ever find a CEO that doesn't have a fantastic personal assistant. Because you need to take away all the complexity of managing stuff that is not your core skill and put it on someone that can manage because they've got better organizational skills than you. And that's the fundamental of great Scrum Master. He needs to be committed to the team by helping developers and releasing them from all their concerns, or at least all their non-development concerns. Except the personal ones. If you're a Scrum Master and Agile coach and you talk about dealing with personal issues, then you have personal issues. And then, I don't hear that often enough, stakeholders, the client. The client needs to commit to releasing great software. If your client don't care, they won't give feedback. If you don't have feedback, you won't get quality. And if you don't get all that, then you're certainly not Agile. Not that it matters, because at that point you already have crap software. So you need to have a client that is committed to help you build software. But there's an additional point, is that the only way to keep everybody together is accountability. Okay, one of the fundamentals of most Agile methodologies, when you start a sprint, for example, in Scrum, you commit to deliver within the time frame of the sprint. There's no mucking around. You have a sprint of 1 week, you deliver the features that you picked in 1 week. End of story. If you don't deliver that, then you failed your sprint. And that's very important because that helps you do better planning, better estimation, and it helps you understand better how your team interacts. So if you don't commit to deliver and you just every time you do a sprint, miss your releases and you miss your targets and you deliver late every time, and it's been going on for 13 iterations, you are seriously having a functional problem in your team. You need to address it, because what you're doing is putting a process in place, not respecting the process, and as such not gaining any benefit. If you always deliver late and you can't deliver all the features you promise, why do you even promise anything? Because you never respect it. So you need to hold yourself accountable to the software that you say you're going to build. Scrum Masters need to be accountable as well. As I said, their role is very important. Sadly, it's one of the roles where we're lacking a lot of good people at the moment. But if you have a great Scrum Master, I shouldn't do that. If you have a great Scrum Master, then it's going to take away all the pain. If you've got someone that doesn't commit, if you go to someone that's overloaded because your Scrum Master is also the Scrum Master on 20 other projects, and as such he can give you half an hour a day for your daily Scrum, which by the way, I will repeat it again, is called a daily stand-up, not a daily Scrum. But anyway, we'll get to why it's important later. They need to commit. If you've got an overcommitted Scrum Master, it's like having a PA that's supposed to take all your bookings and all your appointments, and then you arrive on the Monday morning, nothing has been done because she was too busy taking care of that other CEO over there. You would never see that. So if you have someone to take the load off, they need to be accountable for it. And finally, the stakeholders, if they don't want to give feedback and they don't care about the software, then the software won't be great. So you need to set up this accountability chain across the board, and so you need people that really want software to be great. So we're going to talk about developers. I don't like this slide actually. We'll just switch to this one. Again, we need to split it a bit. So we're going to talk about hero developers. That's one of the best anti-patterns of software development. Could someone give me the definition of a hero developer? Anyone? Gosh, I have to do all the talking. It's terrible. Usually there's at least one person giving the explanation. The hero developer is the guy that sits in the corner. You have put in place all your system by which task that starts never gets interrupted until it's released. Whatever your methodology, so that you don't get interrupted during your work and you can deliver continuously and constantly. But so obviously the client always tries to sneak it in. He always tries to arrive on the Thursday, the day before the release, and go around and say, could you not just do that little change there? Because we want that thing very different now. So could you